and burn.
Hey everybody. So I'm just wondering, again, the thumbnail led you here, obviously. Which era of Cannibal Corpse do you prefer? Do you prefer the Barnes era, or do you prefer the Fisher era? You know, vile forward or the bleeding backwards. Which era of Cannibal Corpse is your favorite? Me, I got into it through Barnes, so the Barnes era will always probably be my absolute favorite. But then George's ability to enunciate and fire out the lyrics, like he's got this like lightning fast sort of machine gun delivery, and he enunciates well enough so that you're able to figure out what he's saying. And in that sense, the Fisher era annihilates the Barnes era as far as the vocals are concerned, because George's vocals, I found, sort of fit a newer Cannibal Corpse sound. Like Cannibal Corpse, as of, say, Tomb of the Mutilated, their guitar plays started to get frenzied and sort of like, it has this sort of out of control sound that I've always found to be really exciting. And it's like the notes are bursting off the fretboard or some shit. Like you can't like their chords are screaming to get out of the guitar, and they're doing it in such a way that it just sounds really aggressive, and it sounds like the guitars are kind of exploding. And so therefore George's vocals fit that style that Cannibal Corpse was developing. And I'm not knocking Barnes's work on Tomb of the Mutilated or The Bleeding, absolutely not. But I just found that the Cannibal Corpse's guitar work was becoming more frenetic and more frenzied and more, oh, there goes my light. But because I'm a professional, that's me, see? Professional YouTuber guy or whatever the fuck. Yeah, so I don't even know if this matches, and god damn, that's bright. But anyways, yeah, like George's vocals match Cannibal's chaos more, but then Barnes's lyrics and his delivery were so psychotic. Like the lyrics were like some scary shit. It's like being raped and killed with a knife, or being raped and killed with a meat hook, or just being stripped, raped, and strangled, raped before and after death. You know, tracks like Pulverized, and She Was Asking for It, and Necropedophile, and I Come Blood, and Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt. Like Barnes wasn't trying to make any friends with those lyrics. Barnes wasn't pulling any punches. The Barnes era Cannibal Corpse is far scarier. Their album artwork was terrifying. I found that the album artwork from Vile forward took on more of a zombie-esque sort of comic book quality, which I'm not knocking. It's cool looking, but I prefer the Barnes era artwork because it was scarier. And I knew that like the sex act on the cover of Tomb of the Mutilated, that made me feel like the coolest kid in grade 5. Because when I was showing that to all my friends, somehow if you owned the record, it was sort of like you were in the band or some shit when you were that young. So when I'm passing the record around, people were looking at me like I'm like fucking Vincent Locke, and I drew the picture. You know, they're like, whoa, look what he's got. And I'm like, yeah, you know, fucking kids in grade 5. But yeah, it's true, right? Like when you're a kid and you're showing this shit off, you were like the coolest kid in school. So I always liked the artwork more. It was scarier. I mean, the cover of Butchered at Birth is fucking horrific, right? And then with Vile forward, it got more fun. Like Gallery of Suicide as a kind of like a Cenobite sort of trapped in hell look to it, with these demon things sort of all being hung. And I like that, and I like how fantastical things became. But I do feel that once Barnes left the band and he was no longer the focused lyricist, and that the rest of the guys in the band got to try their hand at writing lyrics, Cannibal got more fun. Cannibal got really gross, got like they doubled down on the disgusting factor, but it was more about zombies and shit. And so it's like Cannibal had a little more bounce to them, because the Barnes era was dead serious. Necropedophile. I'm going to dig up some kids' bodies and have sex with them. Oh, are you? Well, I wish you'd told me that before I brought my shovel. You know, that type of shit. You're like, no, I'm going home. You fuck all the dead kids you want. Don't call me anymore. I don't want to know you. You know, so the Barnes era shit was terrifying, but the George era shit was like more fun. It's like Cannibal Corpse goes to Disneyland or some shit. And I'm not knocking Cannibal. Their stuff is still vicious. In fact, like, I mean, you think about albums like Gore Obsessed through like Kill. Jesus Christ, it's like the guitar work on Kill. It's like the guys, like they can't even control the guitars anymore. Kill was nuts. And it was like, the other thing that I loved about the Barnes era, not the Barnes era, sorry, that I loved about the Fisher era, was that it's like Cannibal got more punk. they got a little more thrashy. They're a little more willing to experiment. And they, like I said, they got way more punk rock about it. But then, growing up through the Barnes era, that's always going to have a special place in my heart. And then considering the fact that it was the Barnes era Cannibal Corpse that released The Bleeding, which is like, if death metal could ever release a record that had like hits on it, like they could have like pop hits, it would be The Bleeding. Because that record is fun, clever, and catchy. Catchy as fuck. And then those creepy chord progressions that thing, fuck man, it's like your, living nightmare. So yeah, so for me it's the Barnes era, but what do you guys think? This video was supposed to be short. Jesus, I apologize for that. What do you think? Do you prefer the Fisher era or do you prefer the Barnes era? It doesn't matter because either way, you guys are amazing. I'm getting out of here. Have a good night.